Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. In this tutorial series, we are designing this homepage from scratch. So in my previous video, I showed you how to write the HTML for this website. Now in this video, we will start writing the CSS. So let's get started. Now this is our progress as of now. We can see that all the elements are displayed over here. Now we have to style everything using CSS. So let's go back to our source code. And let's go to style.css. We have already linked our CSS file in this HTML file over here. So let's go to our CSS, and the first thing we will do is we will remove all the margins that we have by default. So here we can see we have some spacing between the edge of the screen and this image right here. Now in our final design, we can see that we don't have any margins on the top or on the left. So let's go back to our style.css file and let's remove all the default margins. So here I'll just use a universal selector. So I'll just type asterisk. And here I'll just type margin 0. Now we can see that all the margins are removed. Now we'll set the position of this image to absolute so that it will not affect the positioning of the other elements. So here you can see this image is behind all the other elements. So let's go back to our style.css file and let's target that. So here I'll just type bg left, because this is the class that we had given over here in this division. We can see bg left, and in that we have the image. So let's go back to our style.css and let's add a positioning of absolute, and we'll set the top position to 0 and the left position to 0. Now we can see that the image doesn't affect the position of the other elements, but we also want it to be behind all the other elements. So for that we can use a property called z-index, and we'll set the z-index to a negative value. So we'll just set it to -2, and now we can see that the image is behind all the other elements. We'll also set the height of this image to 100 viewport height, which is the height of the browser window. So let's go back to style.css and let's type height, and we'll set it to 100 viewport height. Now here on the website we can see that the height hasn't changed to 100 viewport height. That's because we also have to change the height of the image inside the division. So here we can see we have this division, and in that we have the image. So we'll set the height of the image to 100% height of the parent. So let's type bg left img and let's set the height to 100%. And now we can see that we have 100 viewport height for this image. Now let's style the other elements. So first of all, let's set the font of all these text over here. We will use a font called Roboto. So let's go ahead and get the font from Google Fonts. You can just go to fonts.google.com and just search for the font. We already have the font over here, so let's click on the font Roboto and let's select the styles that we need. So if you go back to our final design, we need to have a bold version and also a regular one. So let's go back to Google Fonts and let's select the regular version 400. So let's select this style, and we also need to have a bold version. So we'll just select this one right here, black 900. So let's select this, and we can see that both the styles of the font are selected over here. Now here at the bottom we can see the link that we can use in our HTML. So let's copy this link from here and let's go back to our HTML and let's paste the link right here in the head section. Alright, now let's go back to our style.css and let's add the font to the body so that it will affect all the elements in our website. So let's type body, and here I'll just type font family and we'll set it to Roboto and sans serif. And here we can see the font has changed to Roboto. Alright, now let's style the sidebar that we have over here on the right. So let's go back to our HTML, and if we scroll down, we can see that we had created an aside and we have given it a class of sidebar. So let's target this aside in our style.css. So here I'll just add a comment. So you can just press Ctrl and / to add a comment, and I'll just type sidebar, and here I'll just type aside.sidebar. And first of all, we'll set the position to fixed. So I'll just type position fixed, and we'll set a background color of 17183B. And here we can see the sidebar is being displayed. Let's bring it to the right side. So I'll just type right 0. So now it is in the right side. Now we want to have 100% height for this sidebar. So for that you have to set the top position to 0 and the bottom position to 0. So it will give it a height of 100% of the parent. Now the next thing we need to do is set all these icons one below the other. So here you can see all the icons are one below the other, and they are also in the center vertically. So for that, first of all, let's go ahead and add a display of flex, and align items to the center. So now we can see that everything is in the center, and we'll also give it a padding of 16 pixels. And now let's position all of these icons one below the other. So if you go back to the HTML, we can see that we have created a division called menu icons inside the sidebar. So let's target this menu icons division. So here we'll just type aside dot sidebar menu icons, and we'll set the display to flex and the flex direction to column. And now all the icons are one below the other. Let's also add some margin between these icons. So if you go back to the HTML, we can see that we have anchor tags inside the menu icons. So let's add some margin to the anchor tags. So here just type aside dot sidebar menu icons A, and we'll set a margin of 16 pixels top and bottom, and 0 for left and right. And now everything looks alright. We'll also add a hover effect when we hover over these elements. So if you go back to our design, we can see when we hover over these icons, the scale of these icons is changing. So let's go back to our CSS and let's type aside dot sidebar menu icons A colon hover. So when we hover over these anchor tags, we want to change the scale of these images right here. So let's type A colon hover img, and here we will type transform scale, and we'll set the scale to 1.2. Now let's go back and let's hover over these icons, and here we can see the scale is changing. Let's also add a smooth transition. So let's go back to our CSS and let's add a transition to the image. So I'll just type aside sidebar menu icons A img, and I'll just type transition, and we'll set it to all 500 milliseconds. And now we can see that we have a smooth animation. So that's it with the sidebar. Now let's style the other elements in our website. Now if you go back to our design, we can see that we have this container division over here, and it contains all these elements over here, and it has a set width. So if we go back to our HTML, we can see that we have created a division with the class of container, and in that we have all these elements except the sidebar and the BG left. So let's add a width to this container. So let's go back over here and let's type container, and we'll set the width to 80% of the screen, and we'll also have a maximum width of 1000 pixels. Let's add a background color and see whether the width is being applied. So here we can see we have a maximum of 1000 pixels of width for this container. Let's also bring it to the center. So I'll just type margin 0 for top and bottom and auto for left and right. Now it is in the center. Right now let's style the logo. So let's remove this background color from here, and let's type container logo, and we'll set a font size of 40 pixels, and we'll also set the font weight to bold. We'll set it to 900, and let's set the position to absolute, and we'll set the top position to 30 pixels, and let's also set a different color. So let's type color, and we'll set it to 17183B. Now let's style the text and this image right here. So we have to set both of them side by side. So for that we will set a display of flex. So let's go back over here, and if you go to the HTML, here you can see inside the container we have a division with the class of hero container, and in that we have a division with the class of left and a division with the class of right. Now both these divisions should be one next to the other. So for that we can use display of flex to the container division, which is the hero container division. So let's type container hero container, and we will set a display of flex, and we'll also set the height to 100 viewport height. And now we can see that both the elements are one next to the other. We'll also bring it to the center vertically. So for that we'll just type align items to the center. Now we want the text and the image to be on the extreme left and on the extreme right. So for that we can use a property called justify content and set it to space between. Now they are positioned correctly. Now let's style this h1. So let's type container hero container h1, and we'll set the font size to 60 pixels, and let's set the color of the text to the same color that we had given to the logo. Alright, now let's add a margin bottom to this heading so that we have some spacing between this paragraph and this heading. So let's set a margin bottom of 8 pixels. Right now let's style this paragraph. So let's type container hero container p, and we also have a class for the paragraph subheading. So let's type that over here, and let's set the font size to 16 pixels, and the color of the text to the same dark color. Alright, now let's style these buttons. So let's add a comment, buttons, and let's go back to our HTML, and I think we need to add a class for this anchor tag. So here we can see we have these anchor tags as the buttons. So let's add a class and we'll set it to btn, and we have two different styles of buttons over here. So we have a light styled button and also a dark styled button. So let's also add a class called light over here, and for the next button we have a class btn and dark. Right, now let's style these buttons. So here I'll just type container a.btn. Now these styles will be the common styles for both these buttons, and then we'll target these light and dark classes separately. So here let's type text decoration to none to get rid of the underlines, and let's set a padding of 12 pixels top and bottom, 24 pixels left and right, and let's add a background to see whether it works. So we can see that the padding is being applied, but it doesn't have the correct margin. So for that we have to set the button to inline block. So let's type display of inline block, and we'll also add some margin top. So let's set the margin top to 32 pixels, and we'll also add a margin right, and we'll set the margin right to 20 pixels. Now we can see we have some spacing between these buttons, and let's set the border radius to 8 pixels. So now we have rounded corners, and let's set the font weight to 900. Now let's remove this background color. Now let's style the light and the dark buttons. So let's type container a.btn.light. Now let's set the background color of EAE8FF, and let's set the color of the text to the dark color. Right, now let's style the dark button. So let's type container a.btn.dark, and let's set the background color to the dark color and the color of the text to the light color. So we have styled both the buttons. Now let's also add a hover effect. So here for the anchor tag, let's type container a.btn:hover, and when you hover these buttons we need to move it up a little bit. So let's set transform and translate y, and we'll set it to -3 pixels, and we'll also add a transition to this anchor tag so that it will have smooth animation. So let's type transition, and we'll set it to all 500 milliseconds. Now if you hover over these buttons we can see that we have the hover effect. Now let's style these social media icons. So if you go back to the HTML we can see that we have a class called social, and in that we have the anchor tags. So let's target that. So I'll just type container social, and we'll set the position to absolute, and we'll set it to the bottom of the screen. So let's type bottom, and we'll set it to 50 pixels from the bottom. We'll also add a border bottom. So let's type border bottom, and we'll set it to 4 pixels solid and the dark color, and let's set a padding bottom of 20 pixels. Right, now let's style these anchor tags. So let's type container social a. First of all we'll remove the underline. So let's type text decoration, and we'll set it to none, and we'll add some margin between these anchor tags. So let's type margin of 0 for top and bottom, and for left and right we will have 16 pixels of margin. And let's also add a hover effect for this. So let's type container social a:hover, and we'll just change the scale. So let's type transform scale, and we'll set it to 1.1. And right now the scale is not working because the anchor tag is basically display of inline, so we have to change it to display of inline block. Now when we hover over this we can see that the scale is being applied. Let's also add a transition for smooth animation. Alright, now when we hover over this we can see that we have the hover effect. So that's it with the left part of our design. Now I'll stop this video right here. Now in the next video I'll show you how to style this image over here on the right, and we'll also add this background shape over here, and also these colors over here that we see behind the image. So that's it for this video. I will leave the link of the previous video and also the starter files in the description of this video. So if you have any doubts you can ask in the comments below, and if you like this video please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.